the hippie movement. In the 1960s and the 1970s, during that time period in the United States of America, there was what was called the hippie movement, which was a counterculture movement. People had got fed up with society expectations and society restrictions. The normal way society was functioned was revolted against in a counterculture movement called the hippie movement. And the modern day nomad, such as myself, some of our origins can be traced back to the hippie movement. And even people in America and throughout the world now that are very conservative and have very much left the hippie origins, they were once themselves hippies, but they felt that over time the hippies went too far, so then they went the other way and became very conservative now. But like anything in life, when you're trying to change, you will go to an extreme, because you have to go to an extreme place to make change. When you're trying to lose weight, you really can't be apathetic. You really can't be like, well, I'll just be very balanced initially and try to gradually do change. When you're trying to get your life in order and trying to get your health, you're trying to change anything, you have to get intense and get extreme. The key is at a certain point you have to bring a level of balance into play. But many times people struggle, and human nature struggles with balance, so they go from one extreme to another. However, I want to talk a little bit about the hippie movement. The hippie movement itself was a blessing to America and to the world. You know, like I say, it took place in the 1960s and 70s. There was a couple of major issues that they were trying to address. Number one was the anti-war culture in America. We were going to war with Vietnam at that time, which basically had panned out to be a false war based off false terms pretty much. 50,000 Americans died. Even the president of the United States, he was drafted to Vietnam. He dodged a draft because he was rich. He was able to have his father write that he had bone spurs in his ankle or whatever. So what we found out was that our country was asking us to serve for the greater good of the country, but the rich, wealthy people were getting away from serving, and they were able to get out of war free card. And people eventually saw that, and they say, hold up. How can you say you want us to do the right thing, but you're not doing the right thing? Okay. Now, some of these same people that agreed with that hippie movement, they're now very conservative. They align with Donald Trump views because after a certain period of time, they felt like, maybe the hippies went too far. Now they're all the professors in the college. That's what's ruining the country. And then so now they're very conservative because they're trying to change. So I will say that probably the hippies maybe went too far. But, the answer isn't go too far the other way. The answer is try to find the balance. They went too far because they were trying to institute change. Another reason was women rights. Obviously, look, as much as America brags it's a democracy and that all people are equal, etc., women and minorities had to fight to their rights. Most of the time of the country's been alive. It wasn't until the 60s, 70s that laws were instituted. And then even after that, it took a decade or so for it to filter down into society. So that's part of American history. That's part of the hippie movement. Counterculture, changing the culture, okay? So then now, nowadays, they think, Me Too movement, and every girl, always claims a guy's assaulting them. Now they feel it went too far, so they're trying to find balance. So, obviously, look, the hippies went too far. It's just about drugs and music after a certain part. But even sexually being liberated, being allowed to express your sexuality, okay? Because a lot of times for America, even though it's the First Amendment right in America to believe in any religion or no religion, many times it was forced by the culture to have Christian values, not get married to a certain point, not be promiscuous. But technically, America was based on the First Amendment. You could have no religion. You could sleep with anyone you want. So they had to fight to have that sexual liberty, okay? And so the hippie movement itself shows us that you cannot repress the free spirit within a human, okay? And it shows us that there is something to be said beyond the standard, beyond the get a job, work for this company, get a house, have kids, live a normal life. That is not 100% fulfilling for the human. Life is not an exact science. You can't say, here's a job, here's a way to live like this till you're 70, retire and die. Life is not an exact science. It's a level of art. It's a level of a hippie creative culture. Now, it's a balance. There is a level of science involved in art. Okay? I mean, there's a level of science involved in life. Science is collecting data, studying it, making more efficient and better decisions. So what we can learn from the hippie movement, that's part of the human movement. Humans want their liberties. Humans don't want to be told what to do. You need structure, you need laws and civilization. But the people making the laws, creating the laws, have to also play by the same rules. They can't just be wealthy and not have to play by them, or else there'll be a revolt. And so, it's a balance. But the modern day nomad and the modern day person who has something in their soul that does not conform with the standard has to look at the hippie movement and the origins, and also how they became too extreme and how they lost their fire, they lost their structure, because they themselves didn't have structure. Like even the Occupy Wall Street people, they didn't have structure. They didn't have a list of demands and organization. You know, why was the Black Panther organization feared? They may have been too extreme at times, but they had extreme structure, okay? And so the structure and the discipline scared a little bit the United States government, okay? Again, they went probably too extreme at times too, just like the hippies. So, but we can learn from life that there will always be a counterculture, because you have to give people space. And now we're preaching social distancing, which basically we're saying that you have to give people space because you can give them a germ easily if you're too close. There's a part of life that you have to, yes, you have to give people structure. Like we need to get back to work so people can have structure in their life, etc. I agree, because I'm balanced. However, you have to give people liberties and freedom to figure out their own life and not just be a peg in the wheel of life. You know, they have to be creative. And it's a thin balance. And there's no exact science to that balance. That's why they always struggle. Like I say, that's why now many people who were liberal and hippies and counterculture, now they're very conservative. Oh, we went too far. They screwed me. It's like if you ever join a church and then you leave a church, you feel like the church went too far. And they did. However, the church also gave you a level of what you needed, but then when you left, you felt disillusioned, disheartened, and you went the opposite way. There's a balance in between all these things. And that's what the hippie culture and what the counterculture movements throughout history can show us. It's keeping society honest. It's individuals expressing themselves. And that's why you can't just have one uniform way, whether it would be capitalism or socialism. You can't just have one or the other. You have to have a mix, a balance, okay? And that's what I want to share in this video. If you appreciate that, I appreciate if you click that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. Check out my playlist and my Patreon. Support my work. Thank you guys. See you in the next video. Peace and love.